ask myself why certain things are not represented on television all the time. I mean, being nominated for the Emmy this year was an incredibly exciting moment, not for what it meant to me, but the larger meaning in the narrative of television and of our culture. And there was a genuine and important convergence of race and gender in that nomination that begged for a lot of questions to be asked for all of us. Why had it taken 30 years?
Is there an accurate, diverse representation of people on television is a comical question, because I don't know that I would be able to not giggle if someone were trying to say that there was.
You can't argue that in any way, shape, or form.
Keeping in mind that diversity is not just color, it's weight and size and age and just all of it across the board.
You have to look at people that are in the position that, that I suppose greenlight these shows. It's sort of no surprise that, you know, those decisions will be reflective of who we are, you know, and unless we're, you know, diverse in the boardroom, then our content won't be diverse.
I think the internet has helped a lot. It has evened a lot of the playing field. There's a lot of people that have not been given the opportunity to create content on regular television, but they are now getting those opportunities because of the internet. Shows that have been done in smaller ways that have sort of gained followings have, you know, I think Issa Rae is a really good example of that, and her show Insecure now on HBO. I mean, that started as an internet show.
It has to be a change in the collective consciousness, because no one fighter can power through every studio or every network and say, like, we need more diversity. Here are 5 scripts I've written that are incredibly diverse.
Yeah.
You know, it can't just be the one fighter. It can't be the enigma. It has to be a collective consciousness shift to want to represent what's on television and in movies more accurately. I definitely agree with what Viola Davis said. You cannot accomplish something without the opportunity. And if the roles are not there for women of color, and this applies to every one who's not represented, every minority, it's impossible. And that's sort of what I mean about it. It has to be a collective effort. It has to be a collective consciousness shift, because otherwise, all we're going to accomplish is the next 20 years at different award shows, someone who's fought a battle saying something brilliant and poignant, and none of us doing anything about it.
Well, I mean, I think I think something like the Emmy Awards or the Golden Globes or whatever, they go. I mean, hopefully they're just a sort of an anointing and saying, like, wasn't this great?
Hopefully.
Right? I mean, it's not the be all and end all.
Her point wasn't anybody needs to win Emmys.
No,
More
that's not the
African-American
point.
women need to win
No,
Emmys.
no.
It's that there needs to be work for all.
But I think
there
as-
needs, yeah,
right.
people
And
need to
but
be
I think
represented.
As much as there need to be roles for all the women who are of talent that want to work, I think it's the more important thing is the audience at home. To me, right?
100%.
It's like, are you
They need to feel
seeing
represented.
stories that represent you?
She's speaking to all the young African American girls out there that have dreams, that want to feel like they're represented in television, and, you know, that their stories are being told, that they can turn on the TV and feel like, you know, this is a woman that's succeeding in whatever it is, but feeling like, you know, she can flip the channel to, you know, 2 other different channels and see another Viola Davis,
And
you know.
because there are so many places to see things now, and there's so many different platforms where you can consume them, I think we might be at a bit of a tipping point, because there should be no excuse now, with all the ways that you can consume television, there should be no excuse to start a much bigger rainbow. I do think that as artists, we are influencers, and we have to recognize that, and that's a big responsibility. So you have to realize that the choices that you make in the stories that you tell have meaning to someone else. Someone else is watching you in its most literal sense.
For myself, being nominated as the lead actress in a comedy for the first time a Black woman was nominated in 30 years the work exists or the stories exist outside of the gaze of where mainstream usually looks. Do you know what I mean? So
Yes.
it's not that those stories aren't happening or those people aren't trying to write stories or any of those things. It's that there is a way as Hollywood that we look, that we say is about consumer, that we say is about what works, but it's really based in or steeped in this divide that is not just for a young African American girl to see an African American story on TV, but for a young white child to see a black woman and know that her story is not the same, but there is a same. And it's also a story that they want to know for all of us. Like that, this idea of it's not about erasing color or dividing by color. It's not about erasing age or dividing by age. It's really about us as a culture learning that the difference is what's delicious. The difference is what's interesting. The difference is where the texture of life comes from. That's what's made my life better. And yes, it is. A young black girl does. We want more examples of people that look like us. But I think that's one of the things that's so interesting that's happening on Blackish is the same thing with Cosby. We're an American family. And yes, we happen to be black, but there's many a white, pink, purple, and yellow person that looks at us and says, oh my God, you guys are my family. Yeah, we are. There's a sameness that's revealed that we need more of here. You know, we really need, and the diversity question is often directed at the diverse, at the people of color or the whatever, the difference. And it's like, I think the conversation, again, as you said, it's a collective consciousness that needs to be shifted for all of us to go like, raising children, like I want my kids to know that like there's nothing scary about this person. You know what I mean? Like we have to keep undoing all of this.
Well, I think with more conversation always comes more unveiling and more intelligence. We have, as part of the ape family, an evolutionary development that is a desire to see sameness. And until we acknowledge that about ourselves, we get nowhere. So they were doing tests with kindergartners and put them in blue t-shirts and half in red. And by the end of 2 weeks, they were all playing with the same color t-shirt.
Oh, wow, that's interesting.
Irregardless of friendship groups. I need to know when I walk into a room that this chair isn't gonna kill me, this chair isn't gonna take my children. I need to know it's safe. And when you see something that's similar, you think it's safe. That's what your DNA tells you.
Part of your tribe.
Yes. The only way to overcome how we are evolutionarily built is to discuss things like this and let our intellect take the lead.
It was originally steeped in a desire to keep yourself safe or to keep what's yours, right?
And I'm not saying that's right at all.
No, I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying that like some of it started there, but then it gets so entrenched in the way we see each other that like you can't see past it and you don't realize
start to talk about
until you start to talk about it.
The fact of the matter is people are really hungry for content. People in different groups have done a really good job of saying, and continue to do a really good job of saying, hey, we're very underrepresented. It takes a while, but people are waking up. And it's a combination of stuff. It's like, oh my God, right, this group, this group, this group, this group, all these groups are underrepresented, A, and B, television is constantly trying to, particularly nowadays, reinvent itself and be interesting and new, and that's what they want to do. They want to show something new, and one way of showing something new is like, let's show a character who comes from a group that we rarely get to see.
There are many stories, like if you look at the demographics of who watches television, I don't know that it always matches the stories that are being told. And I think it's also out of the fact that what's on television, there isn't a choice for you to choose something else that actually more matches who you are. So as, for example, people of color, I mean, there has not been the choice to choose that on television. So you're choosing from what's there, and then that's what gets.
But generally, like with anything, whether it's media, we love to consume salacious media, so it's always out there. And until we say, we're not going to consume salacious media anymore, it will not stop, because the bottom line is it is a business, and there are many examples, you're absolutely right, where it's not heard. But when those microgroups do start to speak up and say, like, I want this, the fact that it's a business will say, oh, there's a hole for this, let's make something to fill it.
Oh, we can make money off of this.
Well, exactly.
It's the bottom line, right?
But I also feel like television is so often playing catch up, and that's when something like completely takes off is because there's actually a truth about our society that we haven't, as a society, sort of recognized en masse, and then television shows it to us. If you're in a group that's underrepresented, right? You're used to, you know, watching what you see and translating into your world, right? If you're like a gay person, right, and almost all of the romances you see are straight, it's like you take those people, like, I have a friend, I'm terrible with names, but you know, Pam and the guy on The Office, Pam and the
Jim.
Jim. I have a young friend, like a 20-year-old who's a lesbian, who likes to say, I think Pam and Jim are really lesbians. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, okay, I have a real reasons why I don't see that, right? But she does that because that makes it more delicious for her to watch that and sort of squint and, you know, believe that. But the thing is, if you're underrepresented on television, you spend your life doing that, right?
Yeah,
sort of translating it. But what I think the important thing for the people who are deciding what's on television is like, that's not a one-way street, like you were saying. It's like you could be from the most represented group and see, like a white person see black should be like, that's exactly my family, that's my dad, that's my mom, that's my brother.
And you see the similarities as opposed to the differences, and like literally, we all benefit as a culture.
Yes,
like,
we do.
The systemic effect that gets pushed out just into the ether of communities is going, oh, she's the same as me, as opposed to the like instinctual reaction is she's different than me.
Right. And my whole thing is that she's the same as me does not mean she's the same as me and I don't see color. Right. She's the same as me, and because that's also where we go. We often take that next step. But my whole thing is, the basis is she's the same as me, and what's all this different stuff?
Right.
Like, let's discuss
And it's like,
it.
wow, they do this in a very different way than my family does.
that's
I actually like that way. I'm going to try that way.
Yeah, it is actually bad for your kids to not discuss it. To go, well, I'm not racist, and then we don't have to mention it. Like, we've got a black friend that comes over, and that's fine. And Johnny will see our black friend, and everything will be fine. Well, know what? Johnny's 4. Johnny knows he's black. Johnny knows they look different. So you better talk to Johnny about why we have, like, one of my best friends is Indian, and I sit there with my little girl and go, look at the difference in our skin color. Isn't that cool? And we put our arms up together, or you just discuss, like, you know, we have our first black president. We haven't always had that. You talk about things. So, I mean, the point was to open their little minds to differences being discussed and being
positive
and
to
not
celebrate
because
those.
when you push them down, it goes back to find your same, find your safe.